What's going on, guys? Draken1221 back again with a very interesting video today. We're going to go over a special take on the Dragon. Before we get into that, I just kind of wanted to do a quick little channel update as well as just thank you guys. So as you can see, my few videos I have posted here on my computer, my Dragon deck and my Yuriko decks, they're going strong. My budget Dragon deck building series slowly starting to come together. But I just wanted to take a moment. Again, I know I say it a lot, but thank you to everybody who watches, subscribes, likes, and especially the comments. I love interacting with you guys in the comment section, getting feedback, exchanging ideas. Let me know what you think. So all of that response has been just so overwhelming and is really the only reason why I kind of keep doing these. Transitioning here, I've gotten a lot of comments, messages, and things of that nature as far as, hey, can we see an updated in-depth Dragon guide? Can we see an updated Yuriko deck with Neon Dynasty? I've also hinted at, a sliver deck tech in one of my videos, and I've gotten some, requests for that. So I only make about 2 to 3 videos a month. I don't have a ton of time. So what I want to do is do a little poll in the comments section. So if you're watching and you want to see one of those 3 videos, let me know which one you want to see and I'll make them in popularity order. I'll get to all of them at some point, but I want to know what you guys want to see first. So just to kind of review here, updated Dragon on my take, post Neon Dynasty Yuriko. I just recently, Neon Dynasty coming out, some of the cards were inflated. A lot of the cards came down at a pretty reasonable price, so I've recently acquired all the stuff I need. So I have an updated Yuriko deck and then my 5-color Sliver Overlord deck. So once again, those 3 decks are for live deck profiles. They obviously won't be on the OBS recording here, but they'll be live in-person profiles. And let me know which ones you guys want to see first, and I'll take them in popularity order. Going on to the main point of the video here, I came across Brian Kibler's Dragon deck. So Brian Kibler, if you guys don't know, just a quick synopsis of his resume here. He's a former Magic the Gathering pro player. I believe he's a Hall of Famer. He's taken point in designing some very popular games like Ascension, the WoW TCG. Nowadays, he's a streamer of Hearthstone. Very, very well-renowned, well-respected person in just the trading card game community. His deck and gameplay was featured on a different YouTube channel a couple months ago, and that's kind of how this deck came to fruition as far as the list go, and that's what piqued my interest. I saw the video, I did some research online, and I was able to piece together and actually find his complete 100 card list. And again, when you have somebody with the mind of someone and the resume that Brian Kibler has, and you share a similar interest and passion of things like the Dragon like I do, it really takes, really helps to take point and maybe take a look at some of the card choices and the thought process that somebody like that had behind building their deck. So I really wanted to take an in-depth review and look at it here. So, and I can't stress the importance of someone with that kind of background having the same deck as you and being able to compare and contrast card choices and to see and peek behind the brain of that individual. Really, really cool. So let's kind of dive into it here. Obviously, the commander is Dragon. Just to recap for those of you guys who are first-timers on my channel, this is my pet deck. This is my favorite commander. Eminence allows you to cast dragons 1 turn earlier for 1 colorless less. It's a flyer, and when you attack, you draw cards equal to the dragons attacking, and then you put a permanent into play. Big boy, big daddy, 9 mana, but he's awesome. This card's fantastic. I love it. So going into some interesting choices, he opts to play 2 Planeswalkers here. We'll go over kind of the Sarkhan Unbroken first. So a little bit steep on the mana cost at 5 mana value. Comes in with 4 loyalty. +1, draw a card and then add a mana to your mana pool. -2, put a 4/4s on the board. And then -8, you basically just win the game. You search your library for all your dragons and put them on the board. Personally, I was playing this card. I opted to cut it just because of the speed and the efficiency of the play group and the metagame that I see. Not a bad card. I understand the thought process of something behind this. It's just something that I opted to cut due to speed issues, right? 5 mana to draw 1 and add 1 to me isn't worth it. And honestly, that -8 for me just never came up because, Sarkhan was always kill on sight. Because if you can -8, you're just going to win the game, especially with something like Dragon Tempest on board, right? So as we go through Brian's list, I've kind of reviewed this in depth prior, but you'll see a theme of some flavor obviously a lot of dragons mixed in with just a big mana strategy. So I think that's a very interesting take, right? He's going for flavor, dragons, big mana, whereas I took a value engine, efficiency, curving out route with mine, but you'll see a lot of the same card choices. So Sarkhan Unbroken, I can understand where he's coming from with this, especially at the level, maybe the power level he was playing at. Like I said, flavor. So Sarkhan Unbroken. This comes in and out of my personal deck every so often. So Sarkhan Fireblood, very efficient, right? So one of the things with Planeswalkers is they cost a lot of mana, you don't get a lot of value, and then they usually die. With Sarkhan Fireblood, he's three mana value. Basically, when he comes to the board, you could +1 to Rummage, so discard and draw, or you could add 2 mana of any color. So he's going to instantly refund 2 mana, and then but you can only use that to cast dragons. But we're playing big dragons, obviously. And then -7 is you just create 4/4 flyers. I actually won a game with that this past week, but when I saw this in his list, I decided to give it another try, and I was beyond thrilled with the results that this card gave me. So I totally stole this. I stole this as far as repurposing it in my deck. Not a big investment, so if you play it, you rummage a card or you add 2 mana and it ends up dying after a turn or two, you're not super invested into it. So really, really good card overall. I recommend playing this. Like I said, I've slotted this in as well. So we're going to go down to the creatures. You'll see, maybe I'll sort this by mana value here. Perfect. All right. So we kind of have the same theory as we both like mana dorks. So he opted for Birds of Paradise and Bloom Tender, which is what I play as well. Birds of Paradise, 1-drop, is going to add a mana of any color. Bloom Tender, you're playing a 5-color deck. It's going to add big mana to your mana pool, especially over time. Whereas I skewed and I continued with things like Deathrite Shaman, a lot of 1- and 2-drop mana dorks. He immediately went in and like cut something like Deathrite, which would be a little bit more efficient and utility value card, right? Which is what I'm into. And again, he continues with his theme of big mana. This guy's going to get big. It has Vigilance. And then it's basically Bloom Tender just on a different body, right? So you can kind of see the thought process he's taking here. He's like, I'm just going to make as much mana as possible and cast my dragons. Going here, we have Galazeth Prismari. This is a really cool take. So you'll notice as we get into the meat and potatoes of the other spells, he does play a lot of artifacts and some artifact synergies as well. But Galazeth Prismari is a 3 mana value in this deck. And when it comes down, it just makes a treasure token, which is cool. So it refunds immediately one of the mana you spent. So efficiency. And then all your artifacts tap to add 1 mana, but you can only use it to cast instant or sorceries. I'm not sure how often that second ability came up. I would just imagine that, hey, it comes to the board. It's a 3/4 flyer for essentially 2 mana. And it hits the board early, triggering all the dragon synergies. Dragonlord Ojutai, again, this is something I play. I like this card. It's card selection and card draw. Costs 4 mana. Again, when you want your dragons, or really the only playable dragons, start at that 4 CMC for the most part. So we're going to go with Dragonlord Ojutai. Goldspan Dragon, artifact and treasure synergies. Again, this is an overlap with my deck. Can't really pass up on Goldspan for 4 mana. So we hinted at some artifact synergies. This is one of them. Hoarding Dragon. This is a really interesting choice. I think this card's awesome. I can't believe I didn't think of it before. You got to think of all the really powerful artifacts in the format. So when Hoarding Dragon comes to the board, you exile an artifact. When it dies, you put that artifact into your hand. So 4 mana, 4/4 body, you're just going to continue to smack people in the face with it. And, maybe a little bit of politicking, or when they decide to deal with it, you're just going to grab the best artifact in your deck to your hand. Some of the great artifacts that I'm not sure, that I play and that maybe he plays as well, is we have things like Great Henge, you have Soul Rings. I mean, I don't think he plays Crypt, but Crypt's in there. Just a lot of powerful artifacts in the format. So awesome choice. Also on a budget, 35 cents. Nicol Bolas, I played this card. I'm not too much of a fan. This could just be a flavor thing. He's got like an Elder Dragon kind of sub-theme if you see through some of these. But not a bad card in general. It comes to the board. Everybody's going to discard a card. So it comes to the board for 3 mana in this deck, and it just puts everybody down a card. It's solid. It's just nothing that I felt had an impact in the speed of my play group. And then you pay some mana, you flip it, turns into an insane Planeswalker to draw you cards, kill stuff, yada, yada, yada. But I can totally see why he has this in the deck. Very efficient card. We go to Oracle of Moldiah. Again, big mana strategy. So he gets to play additional lands, play with the top of his deck revealed, and play lands from the top of his library. So he's just trying to turbo out as many lands as possible. Cost 4 mana to play, but, it's Oracle of Moldiah. This card's awesome. Going on here, Shadrick's Silverquill, 4 mana in this deck, flying double striker 2/5. But again, it's going to come to the board early, make an impact, trigger dragon synergies. It's either going to give somebody a flyer, draw a card, lose a life, or put a counter on everything. So again, you could use this to politic. You could use this for card draw. You can use this to pump your board. The possibilities are endless. I ended up cutting this, I believe, from my deck just because I opted to play the blue dragon. I can't remember the name off the top of my head from I forget what's that, but it's a blue dragon that lets you draw cards. So, but I see why you would play Shadrick's, the politicking, the ability to draw some cards and beef your board, and throw somebody a 2/1 out of good faith if needed. Tear of the Peaks, card's nuts. I play this as well. Taxes people when they target it, and it allows you to have some spot removal in there whenever you play dragons. Dragonlord Dramoka, big guy. They can't play spells on your turn. Has lifelink, can't be countered. Again, just kind of an overall good dragon, Elder Dragon theme here. Another common theme, Hellkite Courser. I mean, you're going to see a lot of overlap with our deck, but with different strategies. Plays Ur Dragon for free for 1 turn. Dome somebody for 10. Draw some cards, play some permanents. Again, with the Elder Dragon theme, Intet the Dreamer. This is interesting. I haven't played this or tested this, but I am tempted to. I am very interested. So for 5 mana, you get a 6/6 flyer. But when Intet deals combat damage, you pay a blue and 2, and then you exile the top of your library face down, and then you can just cast that card for free. So for 3 additional mana, you draw a card, and you can play it for free without paying its mana cost. So obviously, you hit somebody and you flip a Tiamat or a Clouth or an old Gnawbone. You're just going to cast that for free. Again, it's like drawing a card, essentially, but you just get to cast it for free. So some more value in card draw there. Dragonlord Silumgar, 5 mana. I'm not a fan. I can see why he would play it. You got the Elder Dragon theme to it. It could be a flavor win for him. As far as playability on a high power level, not something I would play, but again, you can play it. It's going to come to the board with Flying and Death Touch, and when it enters the board, you just steal something until Silumgar dies. That's what gets me. When they deal with Silumgar, they get their permanent back. I'm not a huge fan, but again, flavor win as far as Elder Dragons go. We got Old Gnawbone, deals damage. You're going to create 1,000,000 treasures. Steal Hellkite. It's a board wipe on a dragon, so I kind of get that. You do have to pay mana into it. 5 mana and then more mana just to destroy stuff. The only reason I could see him slotting this and it having value is the fact that it is an artifact dragon, so you have the artifact synergies there. But having a board wipe on a dragon body, probably solid overall. Good budget card. I just, in my personal deck, I just don't opt for something like this. But again, I can understand the perspective of board wipe. You could selectively blow up cards. It is an artifact and a dragon, which you don't really see very much. So I can see why it's slotted in here. Again, you got your Tiamat. It's going to come to the board, tutor for some dragons. Clouth, again, with the big mana strategy, right? Whenever it attacks, you're going to add a bunch of mana to your mana pool. You can only use it to cast spells. You can't use it for abilities, but it doesn't really matter. And then the mana doesn't empty, right? So normally this guy costs 7, and this deck it costs 6. It comes to the board with haste. So you're just going to immediately refund almost all the mana anyway. Morphon, I don't play it, but it is a popular choice in the Ur Dragon because it just reduces everything by Wooburg, and it's a dragon itself. And then it's a lord as well. I just think 6 mana is a little too much for something like that. But again, he has the big mana strategy going, so this is perfect. And then again, one of my favorites that I ended up cutting from my deck just because I didn't find a lot of the better keywords to matter. But he is playing a different dragon suite than me, so these are make more of an impact. So Scion usually costs 12, but it costs 2 less for each basic land type you control. He has the perfect mana base, so this card's always going to cost 2 mana, maybe 4. But it basically gives keyword soup based on the color that the dragon has. So again, he's playing a different suite of dragons than me, so I find the blue one to be kind of the strongest. You really want to give things hexproof. That's great. Lifelink is not bad. First strike, it's almost irrelevant. Trample, you have big flyers, so it can be relevant or not. But I can see the choice here. It's just a free body, big boy, and it gives you guys keywords. So onto the sorceries. We have a really decent ramp suite here. So Explore, play additional land, and he draws a card. Big mana strategy. Farseek, your standard good ramp. Nature's Lore ramp, 3 visits, standard ramp. He opts to play the Sky Shroud Claim. Great card overall. I'm not a fan of 4 mana ramp, but again, he has the big mana strategy, as I'll say it 1,000 times. So this card slots in here very nice, fixes his mana. He has a flawless mana base, so this is going to get him 4 colors fixed immediately. I've played this card before. I like it. It's just in the 4 mana slot for me. It doesn't really work. Obviously, Crux of Fate, one-sided 5 mana board wipe. And this card's cool, too. Escape from the Wilds. I haven't seen this card a ton, but so 5 mana, you exile the top 2 cards of your library, and you could play those cards this turn, and then you play additional land. So gives him some card advantage for 5 mana, as well as a little bit of ramp in there, because he's going to play that extra land. Not bad. I kind of like this card. I haven't tested it yet, but I would imagine it's pretty good. Also, 69 cents, so great budget card. Going into his instance here, we have Brainstorm. Brainstorm in EDH is something that, I don't know. There are decks, he does have flawless mana base, so he can, fetch and shuffle stuff away. I think this might carry over from a 60-card format that he's had really good experiences in. Again, it's just going to draw you your best cards and shuffle them away. It's not bad by any means. It just doesn't add a ton of value to the deck. Again, I think this carries over from his experience with 60-card formats and maybe Legacy or things like that, old standard formats. So not a bad choice. It just doesn't offer a ton of value to the deck. So this is one of the things I would probably cut. I don't play this because I have different counter spells, but Stubborn Denial, definitely one of my favorite counter spells in the game. 1 mana, counter a non-creature spell, so it's any non-creature unless they pay 1, so it leaks him, but it has Ferocious, so if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, it's just going to counter it automatically. This card is awesome. For under $2, I would recommend this card all day. I might even try to find a way to slot it back into my deck. It's hard because I play Mana Drain, but this is a perfect budget swap to Mana Drain. Swan Song, I play this as well. Counter target, enchantment, instant, or sorcery. Give him a 2/2 flyer, irrelevant. Again, board wipe, Rift. So Growth Spiral, interesting. Again, with the big mana, he just wants to play extra lands, double those lands, tutor out extra lands. So for 2 mana, he draws a card and then he puts a land into play. Again, no downside to this card. You draw a card for 2 mana, and if you have a land, you put it into play. So it's just going to go with his whole strategy here. Heroic Intervention. I personally go back and forth with this card. I opted for Teferi's Protection. Obviously, it's better, but definitely not a bad option. Heroic Intervention is just going to give everything hexproof and indestructible. Only 2 mana. I would, in this scenario, just slot in Teferi's Protection directly over this. It's just a better slot. But I can see, if you don't have the budget for Teferi's Protection, or if you're kind of just building something and it's in a different deck, Heroic Intervention is a perfect slot. Not a bad card overall. I did get a comment on my Dragon video about it, and I was thinking about slotting this in over something like Steely Resolve, but I don't know yet. So any feedback on Heroic Intervention, let me know. So next, we have this kind of pseudo board wipe here, Klauth's Will. So he's got a big mana strategy. So Dragon is going to come out every game in this deck. Almost guaranteed. So this is more live in his deck than my deck because I'm using the Eminence ability and I'm using it to curve out and ramp quicker. And if the Dragon hits the board, great, it hits the board. If it doesn't affect my strategy. Whereas I think we're going here with more of the big mana strategy. He can activate both sides of Klauth's Will at the same time. So choose one, but if you have your commander out, you get both. It deals X damage to each creature without flying and destroys X artifacts or enchantments. He's got big mana. He's putting no less than 3 into X every time. Could you imagine just 3 artifacts and enchantments and killing everything with 3 toughness or less just for 6 mana. And that's on the low end. On the high end, it's going to just nuke the entire board. So I think this is a great slot in this version of the deck. And then the last card here, for instance, we have Return of the Wild Speaker, something I play as well. Draw cards equal to the biggest guy you have, and then you can use it to end games by pumping everything by +3. Artifacts. So this is where we really differ. He actually does play Mana Crypt, my mistake. He leans really, really heavy into the artifact ramp and the artifact synergy category. So this is where this deck gets interesting, and I find it to be really, really cool. So we got Crypt and Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Fel Warstone. I don't have this in my build, but again, it's a 2-mana rock, slots in, makes any color. It's basically Exotic Orchard. He gets really interesting by playing 2-mana signets. So we got Golgari, Gruul, Selesnya, and Simic. 2-mana ramp is amazing, right? We all know that. Anybody who's played the game knows that 2-mana ramp is kind of the best. So I can see why he would slot these in there, built in with some of his artifact synergies. I think these are great calls. My deck, not the best options, but in this version of the deck, I think these are money. Followed by Coalition Relic. It's gonna add mana. It's a 3-mana rock. Dragon's Horde, 3-mana ramp spell. Herald's Horn, 3-mana ramp spell. I kind of stand behind the theory of not liking 3-mana ramp as far as rocks go, especially since he has the Signet Suite in here. But again, flavor and theme, and they're not bad. It's just he has such a high budget. I question why maybe he would play something like this, but we'll use Dragon's Horde, for example. It's a little bit of card draw. It's a 3-mana of any color. I get he has those artifact synergies in. I just feel like there could have been better cards, especially over the Coalition. But, you know, again, he's the pro player. He's the game designer. He probably has some very abstract and intricate thought process and something that I can't see here. And, again, these are also budget cards, too, you know, for the most part. And the Herald's Horn, I agree with this. You know, I've played this before. Again, I'm not a fan of 3-mana ramp, but I can see it slotting in here. And then we got the Great Henge. It's ramp, it's card draw. It's Great Henge, right? And then into enchantments here, we have Dragon Tempest. I mean, this is probably the single best card in the deck. Sylvan Library. I actually cut Library from mine because I was actually paying into a lot of life. And I opted for some different card draw spells. But it's Sylvan Library. It's, you know, play it. Garruk's Uprising, good budget card. I don't play it, but it's going to come to the board and replace itself if you have a big boy on the board already. Gives all your guys trample, and then when a big guy comes to the board, you draw a card. I think this card's a slam dunk. I want to make room for it in my deck. I just haven't yet. I love this card. Garruk's Uprising, great choice. Rhythm, it's going to, you know, it's a haste enabler, Temur Ascendancy, haste enabler, and you draw some cards. Then we go over to Frontier Siege. So, interesting spell, and I do want to try this card out. So, it has 2 purposes. It is ramp, and it can be monster removal. So, for 4 mana, it's an enchantment. You choose Khans or Dragons. If you choose Khans, you add double green to your mana pool at the beginning of each main phase, right? So, that's main phase 1 and 2, you add double green. So, you have potentially in the span of a turn to add 4 green mana to your mana pool. And then the second option, if you choose Dragons, whenever a creature with flying enters the board, it fights something. So now this enchantment can be monster removal when you need monster removal, or creature removal. Geez, monster removal. Like I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or it could double his ramp. So I want to try this card. I think this card's very, very cool. Mirari's Wake doubles all of his mana. He's going to have, you know, 10, 15, 20 lands on board in the course of a game. And he's just going to double them all. And it's going to make all of his guys bigger, be able to sling out his bigger spells and pay for his abilities. So Mirari's Wake, especially in a slower meta, that card's a slam dunk. And then to kind of round things out, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I haven't seen anything that popped out to me as crazy. Obviously, he's a former pro player. He has infinite access to magic cards. He plays all the dual lands. He's got the fetch lands in here. He has some shock lands in here, and he is a much better man than me fitting some basics into his deck. I just can never find room for basics. I know it's probably a sin. You know, I've gotten Path to Exiled once or twice before and not have a basic in my deck, so he's definitely a better man than me playing a couple basics in here. He also has some check lands, I've noticed. This could be just, you know, he prefers these, or he hasn't gotten his hands on the crowd lands. You know, I'm not so sure how involved he is in Magic these days as far as playing in paper. He very well could have thrown this deck 10 minutes before he played on camera. Who knows? But I wanted to analyze it. We got a Crow's Inversion here for some more big mana ramp. Still got the Haven, the Reflecting Pool. So not super interesting in the land base. Very, very straightforward. Your Cavern of Souls. But ladies and gentlemen, that is Brian Kibler, former pro player, Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer, game designer, you name it. This is a look into the mind of that kind of person when it comes to our favorite commander here, the Ur-Dragon. Let me know what you guys think. Be sure to rate, subscribe, comment, like the video, interact with me. I love to respond to comments. I look forward to those. And probably the most important thing is let me know what you guys want to see. Again, we have the 3 choices. We have Sliver Overlord 5-color deck. We have my own updated Ur-Dragon deck, as well as the Yuriko Post-Neon Dynasty update. And then we'll throw a 4th one in there. You could wildcard it. If you have something else that you want to see that I've hinted to, throw that in there as well. I have a really cool modernized take on a Shadowborn Apostle deck from, you know, based on Command Zone's variant from 5-6 years ago. I have a lot of really cool budget and fun decks, some basic precon upgrades. I just kind of, you know, took the new blue-white vehicle precon, threw like $80 at it, and made some really cool budget upgrades there. So let me know what you guys want to see. Those 3 videos, and then you could wildcard it if you'd like. But that is all I have for today. Thank you for stopping by, and I appreciate you coming back.